And now I'd like to welcome to the program Dmytro Topchiy, co-founder of Liberty Ukraine Foundation. They've been fundraising for the Ukrainian Armed Forces since 2014. Hello, Dmytro. Thank you very much for joining me on Ukraine This Week.
Hello. It's nice to be here.
Now, really, we have so many things to cover this week that have, and last week, that have really taken place overall in Ukraine. But I'd like to start off and get your opinion from a Ukrainian perspective, based on what we're seeing with Ukraine's push into the Kursk region and the concentration there, while the certain areas, those hotspots on the front lines from Kupiansk down to Konstantinivka, Chasiv Yar, and then, of course, near Pokrovsk. Well, they're looking like worse and worse every day. So from your perspective, do you think that this operation is shaping up due to the successes in Kursk? Do you think it's kind of a trade-off? What are your thoughts?
I mean, it's a great question, but I would like to start with the fact that Ukraine doesn't want or need Russian territory, right? So Ukraine was forced to do the strategical move to enter Kursk region for various reasons. So one of the first one is we're actually protecting our civilian population in Kharkiv and Sumy region, because as you know, there was a lot of attacks from Kursk region, ballistic missiles, gliding bombs. So by doing that, Ukraine is actually saving their own people in Kharkiv and Sumy. Another thing is, as we know, Russians were actually getting ready to attack and enter Kharkiv region even deeper and Sumy region. So that move from Ukrainian armed forces was, on one hand, very unexpected, but on the other hand, is very logical, right? Mm-hmm. So, and also we don't have to forget about the boost of morale for Ukrainian soldiers, because now they know how important that mission is to save people and protect people in Kharkiv region. But anyhow, Ukraine is not planning to annex those territories. It's creating a buffer to make sure that Ukrainian civilians are well protected. On the other hand, we will all understand that the stage of war is very wide, and meanwhile, while we're having some successes in Kursk region, the situation near Pokrovsk is dire and critical, but I think that's the reality of war. But I could tell you this, that Ukrainians surprised the enemy throughout the war so many times, and we hope that's exactly the same situation here. And we hope we're gonna see Ukrainian armed forces in action.
Yeah, the Ukrainian forces have been very, very good in the art of surprise. Not only did they surprise the enemy this time, but they even surprised the West. And that's also an interesting thread, that they didn't communicate their plans, unlike the counteroffensive of last summer. They did not communicate this with their Western partners. Do you think that's a good strategy? Maybe that's the way to go to allow better operational security, because obviously the more people you tell, the more chances that it can get back to the enemy.
Look, it's very hard to say anything about decisions of the commanders of armed forces of Ukraine. But at the same time, if that works and we were successful, maybe that's the way to go. Maybe that's the way how Ukrainian army could actually do things much better, right? So, as we know, as you said, last year, that counterattack was not that successful because everyone knew and Russians were expecting it. Attack in Kursk region was not expected by anyone, right? So it was a surprise.
Absolutely.
So I believe that was a great decision by our commanders, and I hope we're going to continue being successful.
Now, Volodymyr Zelensky, President Volodymyr Zelensky, announced the four-point plan for victory. And while he gave us some details, there is still some open questions. If you, listening to his words, could, I don't know, expand on that and tell us exactly what do you think that this whole plan means, and what is the West going to have to do to make this plan actually work for Ukraine?
I think the latest moves from Ukraine on the battlefield, they are pretty much connected to everything that was going to be happening in the next few months, right? We have a General Assembly. We're getting ready with the Peace Summit #2. So we need to have a leverage, right? But what's important to understand that without Western support and without military Western support, Ukraine will not be able to accomplish any of those steps, right? So we need to make sure that Ukraine can protect its citizens, Ukraine could protect its territory, and make sure we're actually pushing the enemy outside from our country. So it's very important to understand that the Western help and support cannot stop. We actually need to increase it and just to continue that and to gain the momentum in this war. So the main thing, and that's that we as an organization and as Ukrainians, will continue talking to all our American friends, friends in Europe and organizations and governments, saying exactly the same thing. We need to have the tools, and we're going to do the job.
Yeah, if you read between the lines a little bit, I think we're seeing, well, we've seen Dmytro Topchiy come out and say, we've prepared the situation on the ground, now the choice is yours, talking to the West. He also blamed those that are citing red lines or escalation as just an excuse for a failure to make a concrete decision. We've been talking for months about the fact that the whole slogan, as long as it takes, is not a strategy, it's just a political slogan. So it seems to me that the leadership, Ukrainian leadership, is very well aware of the fact that certain decisions need to be made, and those decisions are the long-range weapons, allowing Ukraine to strike what the Institute for the Study of War has come out and found 280 targets within ATACMS range right now on Russian territory. So
the Western allies, they are expecting Ukrainians to show some results. There are no doubts about that. We know that, right? We need to show the results. And I'm pretty sure Ukraine has been showing some great results in the past 2 months. But of course, the biggest problem that Ukraine is facing right now is ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and gliding bombs. And that's all we're talking about, the air superiority that Russians have, next to the borders. So the only way to stop them is just to hit their airfields that are pretty far away from Ukrainian border. And the only tools that we have, as you mentioned, and some American provided weapons that we want to have it right to use. So that's the crucial thing for us to actually turn this war into our favor. We just need to make sure that Ukrainian cities, Ukrainian defenders are not being bombed by more advanced weapons that we don't have. So yes, of course, we're asking Americans, we're asking Europeans to allow Ukrainian army to use their weapons, NATO weapons, in order to hit Russian airfields and hit inside of Russia, hit the military installations in Russia to make sure that we're not being bombed, the gliding bombs are not falling on the heads of our civilians, our kids, and our soldiers.
Right, and again, another surprising element to the whole Kursk incursion is that Ukrainian troops have not only continued to expand in the Kursk region, but they are still there, and they're still holding ground, and they're digging in, and it's likely they're going to hold ground for some time. But with that said, there has to be a window of time that Ukraine has that is not very long. Again, they're going to need decisions from the West. How much time do you think Ukraine does have to wait on the West to make a decision, to be decisive as far as the long-range weapons go? And in addition, though, we also have to weigh the situation on the Eastern Front, down in Pokrovsk, right? It's kind of a trade-off. So I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
I mean, first of all, I think we should expect some good news from Kursk region as well. Look, the POW question, right, prisoner of war question, and how many Ukrainian soldiers we have in Russia it's a very critical question to all of the Ukrainians, right? So one of the reasons why in Kursk we're getting a lot of we're capturing a lot of Russian soldiers with only one goal, to exchange them and to get our soldiers back, our civilians back. But we've been waiting for a very long time for everything that we just received, right? F-16s, HIMARS, and different weaponry that we've been waiting for a year, more than a year. So it's a very hard question. How much more time do we have? I mean, Ukrainians will stand there until till the end.
Yeah.
But it's crucial to get that help as soon as possible, right? So I cannot tell you exactly, is it a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
Yeah.
But we are determined, and we're going to do everything we can to support our troops and make sure that Ukraine is just gaining independence back.
Yes, and I think the final thing I want to end on, we've seen actually one Russian drone shot down by Belarus. There's speculation that Belarus could enter into the conflict on Russia's side. I'd like to get your thoughts on that. Do you think that that's a serious threat that is
So I've been working with the Ukrainian armed forces since 2014, so that's why we do have a lot of connections. We do talk to Ukrainian military personnel every day, and of course I've been asking about that question: how serious is the threat from Belarus? So it seems that Belarus has an army, but don't forget it's an unexperienced army. It's never participated in any conflicts, and it's a good thing. But we should definitely look at our north border and make sure that we are ready for whatever scenario that's going to happen over there. It's unfortunately, Ukraine is a situation where there's multiple different directions where Russia or its proxies could attack. But that's one of the biggest concerns that we've been having for quite some time, and that's why when President of France announced that they are thinking of actually sending French troops, the idea was that they might actually cover the territory and the border with Belarus. So this way, it would be a relief to Ukrainian armed forces just to make sure that the border is well protected.
Right,
so
because it ties up a lot of Ukrainian forces, doesn't it?
Of course. We're talking about the north border. We're talking about the border next to Moldova with that annexed territory, right? So that's all taking manpower and weaponry, and so it would be very helpful. So as far as Belarus, it's a threat. How serious that threat is, I hope, and I'm pretty sure that Ukrainian armed forces are well aware, and our intelligence services actually controlling the situation.
Yep. Well, Dmytro Topchiy, co-founder of Liberty Ukraine Foundation, fundraising for the Ukrainian Armed Forces since 2014. Thank you very much for joining me on Ukraine This Week. We appreciate your thoughts.